Hello, and welcome to another Exosphere conversation. I'm here today with Jenny Blake. Jenny is the author of the bestseller book Life After College and blog of the same name. She's a career and business strategist and international speaker who helps smart people organize their brain, move beyond burnout, and build sustainable, dynamic careers they love. And Jenny is a very old friend and the first person I ever Skyped with. This is so fun to, it's one of those little things we share. Jenny, thanks for being here.
You are so welcome. I think that was back in 2009.
Jesus.
Which is so crazy.
It's
or
crazy.
2008 maybe.
Yeah, I think it was 8. It was just crazy to see the years go and how that generation of blogging, the bloggers all over the world kind of kept growing, right. And everyone doing their own thing is fantastic. So Jenny, life after college, you're doing all this speaking and writing and coaching nowadays. What set you on this path? How did this new sort of, you worked at Google for 5 years and then you started doing your own thing and now this is going so well. How did it start for you? And how, just give us a bit of the story.
It's been a little bit at a time. I never really intended or had any idea that it would end up where things are now, which is leaving Google. I've been running my own business for 3 years now, doing coaching and speaking. And one thing I talk about a lot now is the human pivot. So I'm sure you've all talked about pivoting in business and in startups, but humans pivot too. And instead of just thinking of life like we have a midlife crisis and a quarter life crisis, I actually believe pivot is the new normal. And we're changing every few years. And so my story has really been one of a series of pivots that while I was working at Google, I started life coach training. Then I pivoted internally to do coaching at Google. Then I pivoted to do coaching on my own. So there are some common threads that have been there and my love of writing, but that have evolved in terms of how I express them. And truly, I just see it as a bunch of experiments. I know you do too.
Yes.
Like, we never know what's going to work or not. You can only just have a hypothesis, a theory, test it, get feedback, and then see if you can continue or want to continue.
Right. So I love this. I love this idea. And this is definitely sort of a new paradigm. This idea that, well, you may not have this one career your entire life that you imagined, that you envisioned when maybe you got out of college. And then it's like, oh, no, this is not the super clear, structured default path that is waiting for you. It's more of this very messy, confusing, you never have all the information, things change really fast kind of path. And the idea of pivoting, I know this book, The Startup of You, by our mutual friend Ben and Reid Hoffman. Yes, it's a book I really love that book, and they also talk about this idea of like, we're in this sort of permanent beta in our careers. We're always kind of having to change. And what is it? So do you see people sort of embracing this new paradigm? Do you see that when you give them this, listen, this is the kind of world we're living in, this is the kind of thing you need to be doing with a career, they embrace it? And if so, how easy is that process for them?
Well, you're doing it, first of all, and you're inspiring hundreds, if not thousands of people to do this as well. And I think the fact that Exosphere and everyone watching this video has that call, it's not everyone on the planet, but I think for many people, there's this deep imperative to create in the world and to innovate and create meaning. And that's not just entitled Gen Y brats. It's necessary because anything that isn't creative is getting automated and outsourced.
Right.
And so people are so smart to focus on how they can add value and create in the world. And so, yes, I do think many more people are adopting this, but there is still some tension. When I work with college grads or I go speak where they feel pressure to have the resume builder.
Right.
And I think that the reality of it is that, first of all, through globalization, people like you and I can connect. We can see what each other are doing. Now the possibilities are just blown wide open of what's out there. Right. And we see that the average employee tenure is only about 4 years. So that's even longer than probably a lot of our generation might stay. But the idea is that, no one's really secure. There was a big wave of layoffs a few years ago, and I think people observing that said, oh, I shouldn't just rely on my job and expect that it's going to be there the next 30 years. I have to stay marketable and agile and in beta, if you will.
Right. I love that when you say about is it's not just about our calling from a sort of a, well, I feel good about it standpoint, but it's also about a very short-term, impactful, economical standpoint, which is if you're not doing something that is creative, if you're doing something that sort of machines cannot do, then the odds are sort of against you, and so you're kind of seeing maybe this merging. I mean, I'm curious, if you think about coaching, which I'm a big proponent of, a big advocate of, this sort of new ways of learning and everything. There seems to be this sort of explosion that trying to help people organize their lives and thoughts and declutter their heads, etc. And maybe sort of help them merge these two things that have been sort of disconnected. The calling, creative part with the work, business part. Why do you think that sort of explosion is happening now? And I'm sure you see it in colleagues or people doing like that. What is it that we're going through right now that is triggering all these new offers? I guess new platforms.
I think it really is that the technology is accelerating what computers can do, and again, because of automation and outsourcing. There was a Harvard Business Review article that the new factory is a decision factory. That essentially, at least in America, and I know this is a worldwide audience, but a lot of big companies now, they're really decision factories. They're not necessarily producing a physical widget. It's about using your mind and being creative and high-level thinking. And Tyler Cowen talks about this in his book, Average is Over, that the middle it's a tough place to be right now, and that the people who are going to really succeed are the ones that can work with technology and leverage technology and complement it.
Right. I love the idea of, sort of, the middle is a tough place to be in. And I'm starting to see this pattern of, it's very anti-fragile thinking. I know you. I know you read the book. Oh, anti-fragile. It just changed my entire life. I love that. And the day Taleb, I don't know if you knew this, but Taleb retweeted me once, and I was like, okay, best day of my life. I was like, I thought I was over that. Like, oh, he tweeted me, like if Taleb retweets you, it's sort of a big day. But it's very anti-fragile thinking. This idea of like you want to be either really really good at something, and sort of excel everyone on that. One or two things that are really good, and then what you want to do is be in a situation where you have an awareness of everything that's going on. You're sort of looking to the sides and you can connect the dots. You can connect different fields, but you don't want to be sort of okay in a couple of things. That's probably the worst thing. But that's what most people do. Where do you see do you find resistance with people to embrace this sort of new ideologies? And if so, how do you deal with it?
It depends. I think that what people are not always clear on is this intersection of what do I love, what am I actually good at, and what will people pay me for? So sometimes I see that people are missing one of those three, and it causes frustration. So if you're really good at something and you really enjoy it, but nobody wants to pay you for it, that's not a business.
Right.
And that's a tough reality check.
Yeah.
Or some people are working for someone else or working for themselves, and they're not that happy. They don't love it. So I think that part of the idea of experimentation around this is that it's not just up to you. When we're talking about business, is there a market for what you're offering? And if not,
Right.
So if you're a generalist and you can be a little good at a lot of things that people pay for and that's working for you, I say rock on,
Right.
do that. But if you're a super deep dive, like Andrew Norcross to WordPress, I mean, he's the guy. He's Mr. WordPress.
Yep.
So that's a great example of specialization and working with an emerging technology to carve out like a killer niche for himself.
Right. The idea of having, being good, enjoying it, and getting paid for it. Where do you find? I think there's one of the things I've always sort of struggled with in our side of the world. The States, I would say, it's a sort of the main advocate of this ideology, but definitely happens in the West, where everyone has to be the star, right? Everyone has to be doing what they love and doing what they're passionate about, and I think what I'm seeing is that that's just not realistic for every single person to be basically in that perfect sweet spot. But at the same time, I don't even know if that's where everyone should be aiming for, there seems to be where do you find room for sort of people working together and committing and sort of making compromises on what they can do or they should do with their time and their skills?
For me, it's a little bit, it's related to what you're talking about. I went through a lot of change last year and a lot of internal searching because I kind of hit a ceiling in my business. And it's not that I didn't love it, but it was like, something was off and I didn't know what it was. And I realized that to optimize for feeling happy every day was a mistake. That I kept getting down on myself, that I didn't feel happy either by my life or my work, and that was causing a lot of stress.
Right.
And I realized that when I can optimize for meaning, for me personally, that works much better. I'm able to put in hard work. I'm able to ride out some dips because I know what it's in service of. And for me, my driving purpose is to be of service to others and to do writing and speaking and coaching that's going to help other people improve their lives in some way. But that doesn't mean I'm going to be happy every day. Like, I just had to separate those two things, that you can find work that you love, but don't expect to we're humans. We ebb and flow. We have seasons. We have emotions. So I think sometimes when people have this quest to find work they love, it's really, my question is, what are you optimizing for?
Right.
And can you connect with some deeper values? And I love that you, Carlos, said commitment, because one of my favorite quotes is, in commitment, we find freedom. Mm-hmm. Especially among entrepreneurs, we think, oh, don't tie me down.
Right.
But the second you commit to something, put a lease down, buy a plane ticket, quit your job, all of a sudden you're in it. It's not a decision anymore. And I think it gives you a certain grit and resilience and anti-fragility to say, well, I got to figure it out, or I don't get to pay my rent.
No, it's true, and also, like, the other part of committing to other people, like, I think there's and this is, of course, very depends on the person, but to me, what I realized at some point is that the only way I can accomplish really big things is with the help of others. I just cannot do everything on my own, right? But that demands a lot of commitment, a lot of setting aside egos, a lot of accepting a lot of humility, a lot of different things. And I think those are not fun processes to go through. It's definitely not a happy process to say, oh, you know what, I just can't do this on my own. Oh my God, I need this guy to beat me on the head with something because I need his help or whatever. And it seems I love this distinction between happiness and meaning. I don't care about happiness. I really care about meaning. Although I do try to, like, actually, in a conversation I had with Ben for Exosphere, we had the conversation where we talked about this, and he was saying, focus on meaning, but try to sprinkle some happiness. Try to. Yeah. You have to. Otherwise, you're like a monk.
I think it's that counterintuitive aim that if you focus on meaning, happiness can follow for a certain type of person. But if you just focus on happiness, it's a little bit elusive because what? How?
Yeah.
And I'm depending on external factors.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there seems to be, the reason is that I think that a lot of people, and this is what I think also, like you said, affects their career choice and the risk taking is that we have this sort of super high expectations of that we should always be happy and excited and having fun and all that stuff. And we were talking with my business partner Nicola last night. We were saying, like, listen, people are trying to, like, when they medicate for depression, where they're trying to, like, I don't want to feel sad. Like, you don't get it. It's healing. Going through depression, going through those things, it's part of the human, the body going, learning how to deal with things and improving. If you put that away, if you're always trying to just be on the happy side, I mean, you're either going to be, at some point, going to be burned out, or you're going to be sort of apathetic about things because nothing can always be there. But I guess this is also impacting, what people allow themselves to aim for, because they think, oh, well, but I don't enjoy it, I love it all the time, and that, and then they don't do things. They don't try to do things that they may be meaningful for them. In your page, you say. I'm gonna read the quote. You say, sure. The things that scare you shitless require action before they reward you with a courage cookie to keep going. Big undertakings require a belief, even a tiny microscopic speck of a belief, that you can deserve to give something your best shot, regardless of whether you succeed or fail. And I think this is kind of what we're talking about. People may not see the success, the happy moment clearly, so they don't go after it.
I think there's two things going on. One, we're pretty bad at predicting what's going to make us happy. And I think the more that we attach to a fixed outcome, the more disappointed we can get.
Right.
Rather than just saying, being more open, like I'm open to however this shakes out, whether it's a relationship or a job.
Right.
So that's one lesson I've learned the hard way over and over. And then the second is, to me, happiness is I gave something my best shot. So I think there are a lot of people who are fooling themselves in a way that safety is happiness. And for some people, security is a huge value, and it's never going to be a fit for them to quit their job and become an entrepreneur.
Right.
But for the person who feels in their gut and their heart that it is time, they know viscerally that to not try is soul crushing. And at that point, the risk outweighs the soul crushing feeling of stagnation. And so I think for me in those moments, happiness is not success. Happiness is knowing at least I did it. At least I have no regrets. I know that if I fail and fall on my face, fine. At least I tried.
Yeah, you put everything on it. No, I agree. What role? This is totally. I wasn't expecting to talk about this, but really, all this craze for people having to be entrepreneurs or people having to live their whatever. Where do you see the media on this? Like, what do you when you have to help people? Is there some part of your work that is like, all right, here's what we're gonna do with the media. Like, here's what we're gonna do with the newspapers and all stuff. Like, what are your thoughts on that and what we're getting from them and the message we're getting from them?
The traditional papers to me are different than the blogosphere.
Right.
The blogosphere is like, everybody quit.
Yeah.
Move on. The media is kind of like, you're gonna, the media is like, you're gonna live homeless in a van. Everyone's unemployed in student loan debt. Like, you're screwed.
Right.
So I think there's like the hope on the one side, the fantasy, and then the total depressing, like fear mongering that the media does. My stance, and I work with a lot of coaching clients who are quitting big corporate jobs or big tech companies, and I work with entrepreneurs as well. And it's my friend Melanie calls it a portfolio career. I really think there's no one way, and it's a mistake to get fixed in any one idea. People sometimes quit a corporate job to work for themselves, only to then take part-time consulting or to go find another job. Or some people, it makes sense to stay at the corporate job and just have a side hustle. Like, there are so many different versions of this now that I think the really critical thing is just checking in with one's own self and what does your gut say? And until someone once said to me, one day you'll wake up and you'll know. And until that day, don't feel pressure that you're wasting time. Because
just keep experimenting, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Jared, so I got you for a second. Don't worry, I'll edit this. I'll edit this little second out. Don't worry. So, do you know? It reminds me of this quote by Alain de Botton, who is my favorite author. I read all his books, and he talks about how he has this talk on TED about a kinder definition of success, and what he says is, yes, go towards things with all your efforts, but just make sure that whatever you're pursuing is your own definition of success. Because not only it's bad to go after something that you don't really want, but the worst thing is that you may even get there and realize, oh my God, I didn't want this at all. Like, and this is where I think the media is creating in both sides. Like you said, people that maybe it triggers a lot of fear and maybe people don't do anything. Or like the blogosphere and all this, magazines and whatever, they trigger this, the Steve Jobs, the Elon Musk story, and they avoid all the hardships they had to go through, all the lucky shots they had, like avoid all that, and it's like, you can do it, everyone can do it, it's also so fine. I want to talk about coaching. You're a coach. What is coaching for you? I mean, what is the magic that happens when you're coaching someone? What are the things that you see happening inside of them when you're going through that process with them?
I do much more business strategy now than coaching, so that's been an interesting pivot of mine. And the thing that I find is most helpful is to really connect someone with their vision. Where is this thing going? What does success look like? What's your version of success?
Right.
How do you want to feel every day? And then once the vision is in place, then you can set a strategy. Okay, now what do you want to actually accomplish? But then the really critical piece, and the one that I love working with people on, is systems. So I am just obsessed with how to run things most efficiently, and how do you get someone from where they are now to where they want to go in the most direct route possible. It's not to say we're not going to screw up 1,000 times, but anytime I feel stressed in my life or my business, it's a systems problem. You know, some things I can improve in some way. And I try and remember that when I get really stressed.
Right.
It's not about more hours. It's streamline and take it up a level. You know, Albert Einstein said you can't solve a problem with the same consciousness that created it.
Yeah.
So email's a perfect example. Just throwing more time at it is not going to solve it. You will always get more emails. So how can you systematize those processes?
I love that. I love the thinking about systems. Man, it's so many things in common on how we look at business and stuff. A lot of what we do at AccessFear, when we talk about their participants' businesses, ideas, or whatever, you really just get to the point like, okay, but what is your, why do you want to do this? Why is it you? Like, you really just get to the point of vision or strategy, and people that want to get so upset, like, quickly into, okay, but I'm thinking of doing this forum, or I think I'm worrying about this. It's like, listen, take a step back. And why? Where are you headed? What is the plan, etc. And the idea of systems. Have you read Thinking in Systems by Donella Meadows?
No.
Oh, you have to read that book.
Okay.
You have to read that book. Thinking in Systems it changed my life. It's the most. It's philosophical. Like, it's systems from a philosophy standpoint. Definitely must read. One of the books that helped me a lot in this implementing systems. I love this idea of thinking systems in everything, so I support that. You talk about in your website, you said that your clients, you help them to simplify complexity, and I love that concept. And maybe expand a bit on that. What do you mean by simplify? Where is the complexity?
Sometimes I feel like people will come to me with a tornado of thoughts swirling in their brain, and I love what my ninja superpower is. I take detailed transcribed notes while listening and talking. I can do it like breathing. So for me, simplifying complexity is taking everything that's swirling around in someone's head and really cutting to the core of it. And, what's going on? What do you want to do about it? What's next? What's your homework? Right. I can be very tactical. It just doesn't matter what the issue is. There's always, well, what does the solution look like and how are you going to get there? And so to me, simplifying complexity is taking the jumble, making some sense out of it, and cutting to just those key critical leverage points that are going to make the biggest impact.
Do you feel that you need people to help you as well on that? Do you have a coach?
I do. I go off and on. I'm honest. I mean, sometimes I'm like, I wish I could hire me. Sometimes I haven't really found someone who does what I do and gives me notes back. Because obviously I do that service because I value it. So I haven't found exactly that. But no, I have coaches and I have very good friends. I mean, part of the reason I love living in New York is I get to talk with such smart people on a regular basis. And that's enormously helpful. It's what you said earlier about asking for help. I would be nowhere in my business if it weren't for many conversations over the years with very smart people.
Right. For me and for us in AccessFear, what we say, life is about people. The most important element of life is the people. And it's funny because I think most of us are aware of the problems we may have in our work or the problems we may have in our health when we have to change something. Very few people are aware that maybe what's holding them back is the people around them. And it's the one thing that we're really much more reluctant to take actual steps to change. But what I do like what you're saying is that the people around you and the right people around you help you as well simplify your complexity, because we all have those tornadoes. It's not like just because you're a coach, you think clearly all the time, I'm sure.
Definitely not. And we have different strengths and weaknesses, so even if I can systematize things, maybe I don't have the best business model examples. And that's where I think it's so important to look at who's done what you're trying to do successfully and can you learn from them. It doesn't have to be always one-on-one. It can be reading their book I mean, we are so wealthy with knowledge, as you love to read too. It's like I
Yeah.
can't get enough.
Yeah. Well, I love this and love the intersections you've created for yourself for business and personal development and system thinking and coaching. I support what you're doing fully, and I want to end with you commenting on on a quote of you, which I found on your site and I loved, which is, and I want to know what you're saying by this. Chaos can be a meaning maker's best friend.
Mm, yes. Oh, chaos, man. When life really gets you down and pulls the rug out from under you, or you feel that you have nothing solid to hold on to, it's not that we choose that. It's not that we seek that out or try to create it. But when it shows up, man, is it a doorway. Right. It can be such a transformative experience. It's that hero's journey. It's where we learn, and it's messy, and it can just absolutely feel devastating sometimes when you're in the middle of it. But for a meaning maker, that's our fuel. That's how we create, and that's what we create from. And that's how we learn and pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. And so, like, even though chaos may feel really terrible when you're in it, if you can find that little piece of you that can recognize it as an opportunity to create meaning and share this and share knowledge and your story at some point, then that's a really cool thing. And it can even transform the experience as it's happening.
Anti-fragility at its best.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. Jenny, thank you a lot for your time and for doing this. So good to see you again. Incredible what you're doing and what you're accomplishing, and can't wait to meet you in New York. Thank you, and we'll do it again at some point. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Carlos, and to everyone for watching.